All right, I am here with Srishti Kawatra.
That's right.
All right, and we are going to be unpacking everything about her successful exits and ultimately digging into what she's working on now. But before we get to that, let's talk about your background. What got you into business originally?
Essentially, I have all my dad is a businessman. I've always seen someone doing their own thing. I think when I was a child, the thing that attracted me most to it was that you can take as many holidays as you can if you do your own thing. But quickly, I realized that's not true. When you're an entrepreneur, you work 24/7 throughout every day for like years at stretch. So that was initially that as a child what I found really interesting. But I think it really depends on who you are as a person. For me, it was mostly having creating something on my own for a vision that I find interesting and I would want to create in the world, and no one else can maybe believe or see that right now. Getting that to life was something that really motivated me to be an entrepreneur. Apart from that, just the fact of doing something which really creates an impact, controlling my own destiny, and more of the personal traits, I would say, motivated me going towards an entrepreneur rather than, say, up a job at the moment.
Nice, nice. Yeah, taking control is definitely a common theme
Yeah.
on the podcast. So let's talk about your first venture where you kind of saw some success, and let's talk about how that got started.
Yeah, it was a very unconventional start, I would say. I was still working in a corporate job, which I knew it was a very short stint for me because I was looking for an idea or an inspiration to get started. I met my co founder there. We discovered a problem which we realized did not have a solution in the moment and realized it was a big problem to be solved. Essentially, we wanted to do something to work on that problem, but we really did not envision creating like an organization or something. So we very naturally started working towards that. What we did was create a system for excess food redistribution in India. And there was at the time no other solution in the country to do that. A lot of groundwork went in that, from creating awareness to working with authorities to product market fit, launching different kinds of projects that you could go and then maybe get started. So initially just started the two of us working together on that, and slowly as we saw we got traction, it started formulating into a bigger organization. What was interesting was that we took the approach of a social enterprise, which was because it was more of an impact point of view. The bottom line was double bottom line. There was, of course, we were saving money for the administratives, the grocers, the marketplace, supermarkets of the world, but at the same time, we were creating an impact. So we positioned and branded and at the same time registered it in a more social enterprise point of view. Um, and then essentially in the first 4 years we grew it, we bootstrapped it, grew it from a zero to a 60, I would say. And then by the fourth year we were acquired by Zomato, which is like the DoorDash, Instacart, Yelp of India. It's the biggest food tech company in India. And we then, because it really aligned well with their social mission of creating a bigger impact in the food space. And it was kind of unconventional, I'll be honest. There's never been a non-profit slash social enterprise which has been acquired before. So both, we were really, really skeptical and unsure because there was no precedent around it.
Mhm.
And we did not know what to look at. We really doubted what are we getting into the right thing. But of course, there were factors that we considered, both pros and cons, and we can dive more into that and why we made that decision.
Nice, nice. So yeah, the types of KPIs that you're tracking with a company like that. What types of things were you guys looking at?
Of course, the core thing we were working with was food. So we were looking at the number of meals we served, the
Hmm.
number of people we serve on a daily basis, and just generally the secondary OKRs. I would say the metrics were the kind of the number of stakeholders we have, how much our GMV in that sense was how many meals we move, and the amount of meals transacted on the business at
Hmm.
that time.
Got it. Got it. So over the course of, was it a couple years? Was it
Yeah,
2 years?
4 years.
4 years. So how big did the team grow over 4 years?
Yeah. So in total, it was 8 years, pre and post merger in total. Pre merger, we were started with two people. Honestly, we became a team of 10 at the time of our acquisition. And post acquisition, we were around 40 people.
Got it. Okay. And then the leading up to the exit itself,
Yeah.
how did those conversations begin with the biggest food company?
Yeah, it's a funny story, honestly. It was very unexpected. We actually approached them for a partnership. They had a very successful food tech platform, which was B2C. It was more of a marketplace, and they had access to a lot of users who were using their platform or their app on a very active basis every day, every month. Our goal initially was just to get like a option there to donate to our organization, or essentially if Zomato could, fund us in some way. But the founder of the organization actually proposed an M&A because it very well aligned with their overall goal of how they wanted to grow. um, we were really skeptical at that point. We were like, this is not, is this something that we prepared for? But after weighing the pros and cons, and I can walk you through that, I think one of the pros on why we decided to go ahead was how much we think we can grow this organization on our own? What is the vision that we hold for this organization? And can we alone get to that vision? And how fast can we get to that vision? If the answer was not as fast as if we can get together with the help of Zomato, then above us, I think we prioritize the organization's growth and the organization vision which we wanted to achieve, and thought, coming together would be a bigger and a much more better option for us, and the impact that we could create together. I think second, and just linking to that, was the access to resources, the access to talent, a lot of stakeholders, connections, network. The doors that would open for us with an M&A would not be possible, or would be much slower. That would happen if we were working on our own.
Hmm.
And third, as founders, I think we wanted to have a bigger legacy than just one company, and wanted to give and wanted to ensure that the organization is in great hands even once we decided to step down from it. And I think, looking back, it has been exactly what we wanted to do, with the organization that we created. On the con side, when we were exploring this opportunity, I feel the biggest one was because there was no precedent of something like this happening before, like a non-profit slash social enterprise being acquired by a for-profit company. So there was no example to really look at, and that made us a little uncomfortable. I would say the second con was, because there was no precedent, we would not know how the direction, the vision, or the mission of the organization would change. Because as you all know, how post M&A things start to be less in your control, and it's then it needs to fit into a bigger strategy than just what you're working in a silo as. So that was the other concern. But um, overall, I think why we selected to go ahead with that acquisition was, number one, I think the culture fit with the bigger firm and our company was very, very strong. We worked on the same values, we worked on the same principles that we said, how we want to create more impact. The long term vision was also really strong and similar. And third, I would say there was a level of trust that was established both from the Zomato's team and our team, that we believed that these are the right people who can take the organization forward, even if whenever we would want it to step down.
Uh-huh. And it is quite interesting that there's no precedent set for it, and it makes it more complicated to
Yeah,
derive evaluation from
yeah.
that. Like how did they view it? With Was it that all the users and the transactions and the amount of meals that were going through on a daily basis, they would roll that up into the platform? How did valuation get derived? I guess
Yeah,
with
I think it was, again, it was very, I would say, it was created for the sake of this. We wanted to make this transaction happen, like from both sides. So we valued the kind of stakeholders that we have, the kind of partnerships we had in place, the contracts that we had, and their value. Of course, there was a social aspect to it, but at the same time, we were getting in certain kinds of, the business was, we were getting in money, and that kind of rolled up. So basically, the contracts value, the stakeholders, how important long-term business and the long-term contracts were there. And apart from that, the more intangible thing there was the brand of the organization, which was very, very strong. Of course, it got a thousand times stronger and more credible once we had the M&A. But then the brand that we'd established in all aspects of society, and not just with our customers, with the government stakeholders, policy, with great dignitaries like, say, the president, the prime minister, the queen of England, stuff like that, which made the brand overall very, very recognizable, and just like fit into their structure of overall vision very well, which that was also a qualitative thing that they valued a lot. So apart from the usual contracts, business, people, customers, the other thing was the brand, I would say. Very
Got
valuable.
it. Got it. I like that. So let's talk about timing. I think there's a ton of questions. Everybody's in different chapters of their life. Every business is different, but what can you share around when the right time to exit is?
And that's very important. I think I believe, honestly, we started when I was 21. Like my co-founder was 22, and we were very, very young. I feel there's a different kind of skill set that you need from bootstrapping the company to getting to, say, like 50 people or 100 people, and then post that. There's certain kind of skill set that you need. And as founders, you need to constantly learn, keep changing yourself, adapting yourself to the new situation at hand, and how you grow the company. um, at the time, I feel like I was not ready for that stage of growing the company, and I was more excited about the bootstrapping and the earlier part of the organization's life cycle. And we felt that for us to really ensure that the organization succeeds in the long term, we would want it to be uh, more formal structure, more processes, more expertise would be much better than the kind of thrifty way, or the kind of bootstrapping way that we were used to running the organization. So we
Got it.
the overall growth, that would be a better path and a newer skill set that we wanted to incorporate in, say, the talent of our workforce.
Got it. Yeah, and I think you touched on the learning there as well. The amount of equity in just learning
Yeah,
when you go through something like this and seeing how a big organization works after an acquisition is just like a high speed business school kind of track to go
yeah,
into it. So there's definitely value there as well that people often discount.
yeah, I agree.
For sure. So, how about preparedness? What types of tips could you give around preparing for a transaction like this?
Wow. We were honestly like, did not even expect this, so we had to prepare on the go. It really helps to build that trust at the end of the day, and the more people you talk to, the more comfortable you will get with the sudden marriage of two people or two companies that happens, right? Like, if you need to know your partner before you get into a marriage with them. So I think we spoke to a lot of people, former colleagues, people who'd worked in that company, investors of that company, and that just made both the company and us feel that there was more trust, and they knew that we were serious about it. And at the same time, the kind of conversations we had made us feel much more secure. I think that's one tip. Just doing more background check, more the ways you can build trust is really important. Second, I would say, to be prepared for it is be confident about your numbers and what strengths you offer as an organization or as a founder, and how you fit into the bigger picture of the company that you're being acquired by, or just the transaction that's about to happen. What and separate those two things. How does the organization fit into that how does your organization fit into that bigger scheme, and how does you as a person, as a founder, see your path with the other the organization that you're going into. How does that play out, say 2 years in, 4 years in, 5 years in? And be very, very clear and prepared on that. And I would say the third part would be just be flexible, but also have an opinion on your organization's strengths, how much you would want, what is your the least amount that you're willing to say sell for, or the maximum amount, or what are you comfortable with, which are the points or areas you're willing to negotiate on, what is a non-negotiable things like that. So you know your priorities, and it's very easy to forget that when you get into a conversation. And there might be some shiny object and you get distracted with what your priorities are, and then you come back. I've seen a lot of cases of founders where they get sidetracked, or they get, for the lack of better words, cheated on after an exit. And people usually lose their rights. They get diluted, or they it doesn't even matter after a point of time. So it's
Hmm.
really important to know what your non-negotiables are.
Well said. Well said. So the company was Zomato. Was that
Yeah.
the? So the transaction happens. 10 people, and you go there. You stay there for a while. Was it like a? Was it an earn out? Did the whole team come over? Like
Yeah.
all 10 go over for a couple of years, same length as you? How did that look?
Yeah, so the whole team came. We shifted bases. We like the offices.
Hmm.
Everyone was now on the payroll of the new company. It was a mixture of a cash buyout and then a stock,
Hmm.
and then of course the usual, the vesting, and the
Hmm.
team was there. All of that, yeah.
Nice, nice. Okay, so you're there at Zomato. What types of things are you working on? Was it the current or the previous business? Was it the same thing? Did it just expand under the umbrella, or did you kind of go out within the company a little bit?
Yeah, I would say a mixture of both. Since uh, I think the bigger task and looking back is more how you fit into the bigger picture, and what synergies can you drive for both organizations. So a lot of time was spent on how you can drive value for both organizations, and what projects can you work for, how can you have the best use of the talent in both teams, and things like that. So a lot of time was spent on that, and how can each company drive value to the other. And the other, of course, a majority was also spent on how do you now suddenly have access to the best people, the best, a lot of funds, a lot of expertise on the table, and how can you grow your organization? Think of like your dreams of everything that you wanted in the world is now possible, and now you need to drive that growth that you'd always wished you had. You already wished you had a bigger budget and more people and more help, and now you have that. So what can you do now to really scale and create the work that you wanted to do?
Hmm. Got it. Got it. So it all happens. You eventually transition out of the company. What do you go on to do next?
Yeah, so for me, it was really important to, as a person, I am really inquisitive and I want to learn more about different things and industries. So I wanted to take a step back from only being in, say, food tech, and see what are the opportunities for me to explore. So I decided to go to business school. I'm currently at Stanford, and I wanted to still stay close to the startup ecosystem, I would say. For me, just this world is so exciting, and I can never see myself going back and working in a large corporation. I hope this doesn't come back to me 10 years later when I'm watching this podcast. But yeah, so I am getting into investing. I believe that there's a lot of people with great ideas, and the world needs a lot of innovation, and there's a lot of great things happening with AI coming in. Different kinds of behaviors of people are changing, different kinds of societies need more support and innovation. So I'm excited about that. I'm supporting early stage founders.
Nice, nice. Do you have like a specific focus that you're looking at
Yeah.
for making investments?
Yeah, so I'm passionate about healthcare,
Hmm.
FinTech, and just everything in the space of AI. And like right now, I have a background in consumer tech, I would say. So all of everything that encompasses these few things, and just everything AI, honestly,
Hmm.
I'm looking at. Yeah.
And one of the things that I try to talk about on the show with female entrepreneurs specifically is what types of challenges, like if you're meeting with female entrepreneurs on a regular basis, what type of challenges do you see them facing currently, and how can we kind of solve those or help?
It's a short question, but a long answer. Being having been a female entrepreneur myself, I think there are a lot of biases and a lot of assumptions, which do not even come to fore, because you don't, like, investors usually don't have a candid conversation, and they just make these assumptions in their head. um, and having worked with a lot of female entrepreneurs in the last year, honestly, and I was actually working with a fund that supports only female founders, and both founders and invest in female GPs. Essentially, it's called Gingerbread Capital. I think one thing that I discovered was it is not a problem of the supply. Like, we have great female founders who really are working on the best and the most innovative things. It's more, are the investors putting in enough money to support them? And by what I mean by that is, do we have enough female investors who can make decisions? If we do not have them, female investors, GPs, who can decide whether to invest in a company or not, there would not be enough dollars going to to these entrepreneurs. It's honestly just about representation at every level. Right now we have female VCs, but they're at more junior levels, or that we might have one partner at a female partner at a firm, but honestly they do not are not able to make decisions or drive decisions. So once there's more quorum and more accountability and responsibility is when we can actually see more money going to female entrepreneurs. Right now, it's like 2% of all the VC money that goes to entrepreneurs.
Yeah, yeah, I'm familiar with that, the 2% kind of
Yeah.
mind-boggling number, and we've talked about it a lot on this podcast with female entrepreneurs, female investors, and it's been brought up regularly that that is the most impactful way to change, is the investor side of the table is a female as well, saying like, hey, yes, we're going to invest in you. And there's also another dynamic where between men and women, sometimes men are coming to the investors earlier to say like, hey, I have this back a napkin idea here.
Yeah, that's a lot. Honestly, that's what there's a lot. The funnel becomes very, very small for female. That's why I said it's a chicken and egg situation, honestly. But once you see more female investors, the female entrepreneurs feel much, much more confident of
Mhm.
going there to speaking or reaching out to a female investor, even if they're more earlier in the process. Just the friction is much lesser, I would say, than reaching out to a male investor. There's a lot of more pressure of being perfect, having the right kind of revenue, having the right go to market, and just a lot of I would say just mental barriers that you have, which are much lesser and less guarded if you're approaching a female investor.
Mhm. Yeah, and empowering that specific female investor to make the decision to
Yeah,
invest. I see what you're saying of there can be female investors, but they need to be decision makers
yeah,
at that level specifically to make it kind of equal out. Well, cool. Yeah, I always try to brainstorm some ideas there, just because the 2 or 3% figure is just kind of mind blowing
yeah,
to think about. So any solutions out there? I know there's creative financing options out there and all of that that
yeah.
are using data to kind of remove biases and stuff like that nowadays, but a lot of interesting things
Yeah,
in
see,
that
venture will
space.
always be a people's, like it's a very people-driven,
Yeah.
business. We can put in data, we can put in ways to remove bias. By the end of the day, you're convincing a person to give you money,
Hmm.
and that can only happen when, even through that bias-free system, there are cracks that you can, loops that you can play through, and at the end of the day, you're convincing a person, and that person, when you need to convince them, there would be a bias that plays in.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Well, cool. So those are all the questions I have for you. Where can people learn about what you're working on now?
Honestly, LinkedIn. My it's LinkedIn is Srishti Kawatra. You can just message me there, connect with me there. And if you're working on something interesting, I'd love to know if I can help. If you're just starting out, anything that I could be helpful with, I would love to just support in any way possible, be it any kind of industry that you're working on. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, wherever you guys are listening on iTunes or Spotify, the links that were just mentioned are in the show notes. So definitely go check those out. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story.
Thank you.